what is interesting for us for our university, I mean, Universidad Nacional del Litoral, is that we are having a good coincidence because we are running a winter school here. Winter is because we are in winter that time. And the study case for the winter school is also San Javier. It means that we have a sort of overlap with both programs because we share the same study case. And I think we both focus in the challenging that represent to think about policymaking for a small town in a Latin American environment. And it represents the challenge to adapt the Agenda 2030 sustainable goals to requirements of a very particular environment. And I mean, Argentina is a development country, and San Javier is a very small town with lots of difficulties and with a real lack of development, if I can say it that way. What we worked during the last week with the students was about that. What is San Javier? San Javier is a very old town in Argentina. Everything is new regarding regarding Europe, for example, but it's more or less the same time in the same land in history, talking as the United States. America is all in the same part of the history of the Occidental perspective. We have a town that was founded in 1743 by the Jesuits as a sort of mission. It was it's not exactly a reservation, it's a reduction. So, of course, the historical background is important here because it let you know how much engaged is the town with the landscape where we deal every single day. We deal with the possibility to have big floods because we are by Paraná River. And it is very important because along the history of San Javier is this history of its floods they have along the time. And in this context, they are trying to focus in the future. They are trying to see how to take any profit from the potential that the landscape represent for them, and they are trying to deal with the infrastructure they need to promote the tourism as productive, as an industry, as a productive activity. So in this environment, the students think about which one could be the best policies to improve their best conditions and try to succeed in a future scenario. I don't know if it is enough for you to understand what is going on with Santa Fe or what the students did during the last couple of weeks.
We're gonna start with where Miguel ended, but we wanted to say first a few words. As a group, as a whole group, we analyzed this policy brief and this case study through theoretical lens, and we took 3 theoretical lens that we learned for this 3-week course with the group. That means we're gonna talk and we're gonna analyze this policy case study, reading 3 major concepts. Those are health and health policies, the SDG, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and then peace engineering. And I'm gonna just make a little zoom-in each theoretical framework. And when we talk about health and health policies, we're gonna analyze a way to do public policy that considers health in a holistic kind of way. It's not only about preventing illnesses and prolonging life, but also improving living conditions. And for that, as Miguel said yesterday, we need to seek synergies. We need to take into account more stakeholders, and not only powerful stakeholders, but also communities. And we need to take into account climate change and community participation, as well as principles such as some others that we're going to talk about later. Then we're going to analyze all the case through the lens of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially with strong focus on goal number 11, that is sustainable cities and communities. And then we're going to talk a little bit through the lens of peace engineering that considers that peace solutions and peace policy making take usually into account sustainable views and sustainable approaches to complex problems. And in order to do that, we took into account three main dimensions that are climate change and sustainability, JEDI, that we're gonna analyze later in Rio Grande as well, that is justice, equity, accessibility, diversity, and inclusion, and then also community participation. So we're gonna see and analyze all San Javier case study through this theoretical framework and lenses. In order to do that, I leave my partners here that are gonna start presenting our dimension that it's housing. Okay, thank you.
And thank you all. We are one of the 4 groups, so we are going to talk about housing, about San Javier and local communities. So I'm going to start, with the policy context. That means what we took into account to solve, or trying to solve this problem. So we ask ourselves 3 questions: where, what, and why. Where, as Miguel told us, is San Javier. San Javier is located in the coastal region of Santa Fe, province in Argentina. What is, which is the level of resilience to climate change of San Javier, which we think is low. And why is this problem? It's because of the poor living conditions that includes precarious housing situation and poor public services distribution, high level of extreme poverty, and increasing vulnerable communities residing along the banks of the San Javier River. Now, in order to do that, we did a policy analysis in which we consider 5 dimensions and also the stakeholders involved in this case. The 5 dimensions considered are poverty, precarious living, climate change, migratory flows, and lack of government capacities, resources, and citizen participation. And the stakeholders that we think that are involved in this case and that need to contribute and participate in the decision-making progress are, so the stakeholders involved are state and local government, national and local NGOs, international organizations, non-profit organizations, and last, grassroots movements. So now, again.
Okay, we've only been here 3 weeks, so we have to accept our own limitations towards policy alternatives. And when analyzing policy options, we understood we couldn't just propose policy alternatives out of the blue. So we thought that we should follow, read first the state plan and the local plan and consider that into account. The state plan is the development plan that Santa Fe is currently implementing, and it's called Toda Costa. I think most of groups used it. And at the same time, San Javier has a local plan that it's working on, and it's analyzing a strategic plan for 2030. So those are current plans that are being implemented or are being designed, and we should take into account, but we also had some alternatives, some policy alternatives that Natalia will explain like a little bit more, but include improving housing conditions, strengthening local government capacities, and improving community development and resiliency.
Well, so taking into consideration everything that they said, we thought of some actions that we believe are necessary in order to achieve those policy alternatives that I was talking about. And we did so having into consideration that we wanted to have an integral approach. So we wanted to think of actions that could be implemented at the state, local, and community levels, and how these three levels could work together and complement one each other in trying to solve this problem. So the first set of actions goes to trying to improve housing, conditions. So the first thing we tried to do was something that we learned at the Tree Center. We tried to close the gap between data and policymaking. So we believe that it is necessary to conduct an assessment of environmental health in areas of risk and liability conditions that tell us more about where these settlements are, which are the people that are being there, who are the most vulnerable group, and well, how they are living there and which are their living conditions, and have like updated information on that. And based on that information, we propose to design a new development law for San Javier. That's something that we work with the following group that's going to tell you more about it. That is the urban development group. But for us, the important thing here is to try to, on one side, try to redefine which are the risk plans of constructions. And then, of course, try to create a system where the vulnerable population that we resettle have the adequate basic services they need for their development. And then, based on these two previous points, we propose to construct adequate housing units. When we say adequate, we're thinking about affordable and sustainable, and that's how we also thought, based on the peace engineering symposium we had until yesterday, how we can collaborate with local engineers and universities to try to create cheap or accessible materials to create these houses, but also flood resistant materials that could prevent or help these communities become more resilient in the face of future climate events. Oh, sorry. Well, I continue. And of course, we cannot do this without money. So we were thinking about implementing fiscal incentives for construction companies. And then finally, relocating vulnerable households and families, especially those that are based on the San Javier river banks. And of course, giving always priority to, after our research we did, to female-led households that have children. And of course, with their participation during the whole process. Regarding the second point, we believe that to do all this, we need to strengthen the local capacities to implement these actions. So we propose to deliver workshops for public officials and technical personnel, foster technical cooperation with international, national, and local entities that have been very successful at relocating some of this vulnerable population, and develop strategies to obtain external funding to implement these housing initiatives. And we have been doing some research, and in the report you can find, we have been looking at some multilateral banks or international organizations provide this technical cooperation or this training for free, or that are open for these local departments to apply for international funding to implement their policies. And then finally, with all of this that we hope these local entities will learn, we propose that they have to design an emergency protocol in the face of climate events to improve response capacity once the climate events like a strike. So we want them to become more resilient and to help their citizens to be more resilient in the face of climate events. And then finally, in order to really guarantee that there is a JEDI perspective and a health and all policy perspective in our solutions, we propose to involve communities. And so we propose to have a development of local councils for community participation during the entire process. But also we know that providing these communities housing is not enough. As Manuela was mentioning, there is a lot of unsatisfied basic needs. So if we truly want them to develop and to grow, we need to provide them more than that. And that's something that we also learn from Beta. So we propose promotion of new jobs in rural areas through public-private alliances, and to stop, this will also help to stop the migration flows from rural areas to urban areas. Delivery of workshops to train residents on how to prepare for and respond to floods. Encourage the creation of local housing cooperatives. That means that they can pool resources together, work together, and improve the houses on their own. And that also can be a source of income for these communities. And then creation of community-led services centers. That means that we try to help them have healthcare centers and primary care centers, but also education. And we wanted these services to be provided, or at least to be led by these communities themselves.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are the Urban Development. So before beginning our presentation, there is something really important that we have to explain. That is that we cooperate with the previous group, because we saw when we were making these projects that the two policies are really similar, because when we talk about urban development, we have to talk about housing and we have to talk about people. That's how in our project, we don't have the resettlement of the population, the vulnerable population, as a public policy topic, but we serve from the other, with the previous group, as proposals in order to make our proposal. And so we're not going to be so repetitive, because some things have already been mentioned, but there is something really important that we have to state here. That is that we saw that San Javier has strong structural problems. And one of the most important of them is the very limited access of the population to essential public services. And we have that data from the last census that was in 2010. So we can say that the information that we have is a bit outdated. So then you're going to see why I'm saying that, and why is the reason of one of our proposals. And also the one study conducted by a local institution, like a local education institution, showed that 3/4 of San Javier's population lives in a social vulnerability status. And that's something that we think that is the main problem, and the problem that our group wanted to focus on.
This is the word, vulnerability. I mean, our group was focused on understanding how vulnerability is because of the lack of a proper urban development. And that being said, we identified a great problem that we already are familiar with, which is the flooding problem. These guys are having this very huge problem, which is when the river is growing, the main victim is people. The first victim is people who lives next to the river in zones prone to be underwater. And this is a problem that can be solved if we pay attention to it and we address it in the form of a public policy. So our policy options try to identify the vulnerable population and their needs. And based on that, we build this plan that has participatory mechanisms and also seek of strategic investments. I mean, you need money in order to create this, and in order to give also the guys that have to make some houses the proper funds to do so. So we also added agreement with the university, which is the Universidad Nacional del Litoral, and local organizations, because you don't also want to give them houses, you want to give them jobs, and to give them jobs, you have to give them education. So, and we also have this point which tries to will create biodiversity reserve in the remaining lands of reserve population, so people can still have this bound to its own lands and its own territory.
So the first case and the investigation of the vulnerability situation and the needs of this population, we thought about conducting a short field study that is going to have a duration of 3 months to create data about the vulnerable population, because something that we talked with Miguel was that there is no data. There is a lot of data about the percentage of people that lives in vulnerable situation, but there is no data about how they live, where they live. And we think that this is really important. It's the first step in order to do urban development projects.
Yes. Okay, and then, well, our urbanization plan needs dialogue with local government and also to create some collective incentives to people to leave their houses. I mean, this is a story that these guys built on their own places, on their own land, and we need to create some lines of credit, give them education, and also create something that makes them want to move from there. So
yes, and we also we thought about searching for fundings in international organizations like the World Bank or the Infrastructural Bank of Development.
yes,
That are the first investors in Latin America, as we know. And the fourth step, or the policy that we thought about is the series of education plans, the agreements, the first part that we need in order to have or to make or to be able to make education plans and courses in order to obviously higher the qualification level of the population in San Javier, but also in order to be able to make these professionals that have studied in the Universidad Nacional del Litoral come and help us or help the City Hall to build this urban development project and the infrastructural part of it. And the last one that we thought about that Francisco mentioned is the destination of the creation of the biodiversity reserve in the remaining lands of the resettled population, because we think, and that is really important, to not destroy the relationship between this resettled population, this vulnerable population that lived in their lands and their territory. So we thought about this biodiversity reserve that is going to make some benefits that are going to be distributed between the vulnerable relegated population and the City Hall. And we also want them to participate in the decision-making process. So that's why we thought that was the best option in order to do both things.
yeah, people get houses, education, and the local government get the safety that involves not being always in a state of emergency. You know, the the City Hall, sorry, won't be under emergency in a constant basis. And that's what our plan is proposing, a proper urban development for people to live in a better society, for people to live in better houses, and for people to be under a more suitable environment.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. We are group 3, and we will be focusing on the environmental and sustainability perspective of the San Javier case. And I'm not going to repeat what everyone already said, but through this lens, we analyze the problem and seeing that San Javier is experiencing increased exposure to flooding and also increased vulnerability from the population and the city to that flooding. And in identifying what the problem is and where this flooding is coming from, we understood that it is in turn due to the intensive production model of the agricultural and the livestock industry, not only in San Javier and in Santa Fe, but in the littoral of the Paraná. And in that, we identified 3 problems that we were seeing in this case. First, the intentional and planned fires that are related to trying to expand the frontier of production in San Javier and in the surrounding areas. This causes the soil to erode and to decrease permeability, which in turn forces limits the barrier that it has when water comes. Then we identify the desertification and soil erosion, which is due to monoculture and intense livestock activity, which in turn also limits all the barriers the land has against water. And finally, we know that San Javier, as Miguel told us, has an intense rice production industry. And in this industry, there's a misuse of the hydric resources when we have to irrigate the fields and then drain them. And that it changes the course of the river and the flow, because we have to take the water from one place into the other one, and that it messes with how the water flows and what are the areas that are going to be affected when the flood comes. To address these problems, we propose 3 policy options. First, to increase the local state capacity to promote sustainable family agriculture in San Javier. Then to promote technical advisory of local producers in what are the new and most sustainable practices to continue with agriculture and livestock production. And then to strengthen the technical capacities of these producers, engaging with the INTA and the Universidad Nacional del Litoral in creating technical courses so they can learn more and have the academic community engaged with these new techniques that can be more sustainable and more also healthy in terms of using pesticides and agrotoxics that also impact people's health.
I wanted to say that the scale of our solutions is a bit lower. It's a project, not like a big, they are not big solutions. They are like 3 different goals to a same project. And then we have the actions that we have to set to achieve that goal. So the first one, to increase the local state capacity for the promotion of sustainable family agriculture. We thought about 4 actions. The first one is to establish a special department focused on promoting sustainable family agriculture in San Javier. We realized that they didn't have an institution to play for that in San Javier, so we thought about it. And we thought about hiring a special personnel to facilitate the department for sustainable family agriculture. And it is so important there to map external funding sources to develop the sustainable family agriculture, because there are not enough resources in San Javier and in the province. So we thought about finding new sources and loans for other places in the world. And well, the last activity to achieve this goal is to monitor and evaluate the implementation of each activities of the project. The second one is to promote technical advisory of local producers of sustainable practices. And to achieve this goal, we thought about hosting meetings and participating meetings with local producers. And these meetings are oriented to identify the potential capabilities of the communities. We learned this in the tree center, and we want to let them know what are their own knowledges and what we can support of what they can now just do. So in order to that, we then want to design a series of collaborative projects for family scale sustainable agriculture. With this project, we want to reinforce what they just know and potential their own capabilities.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you. Well, to continue with the second goal, the 2 following actions that we propose are 2.3 to interlink the corporate projects for sustainable family agriculture with financial resources. When we think about this, all of the group, like Marty, Gonzalo, Asha, and me, we always are thinking in international system and the resources that we can find in international system at the national level, regional level, and local level. So we also think about doing a map of factors and resources that we can find to can make this action and also to achieve this goal. The last action of this goal is to monitor and evaluate the implementation of each of the activities developed. Because as I said earlier, all of us have worked in the public sector, for example, and we are very we are big fans of monitoring and evaluation of these policies and these programs. And I don't want to forget to say that we cannot forget that all of these options and policy options are related to the sustainable development goals. For example, for the first and second option, We have the first goal, the second, third, 6, 8, 12, 13, and 15 goals of the United Nations. And for the third one, that is to strengthen the technical capacities of the San Javier agricultural producer through training from INTA. INTA is the National Institute for Technology and Agriculture. It's the most important institute in Argentina for this. And Universidad Nacional del Litoral, that is in Santa Fe, near my home. We related this with the 11 and the 16 goals that are sustainable cities and communities and peace, justice, and strong institutions. We want to make a point about this. We can see that the second and the third goal are very similar between each other, but what we were thinking for the third goal, or the third policy option, is that we need to make a very strong alliance between different actors that are involved in the territory, not only in San Javier and in Santa Fe, also in Entre Rios, in the Lisbon region, and of course in Argentina, like a multi-level governance. So for this third policy option, we were thinking in the first action is to establish a working agreement with INTA and the UNL. The second is to provide technical advice for the implementation of each of the productive activities resulting from the previous activities with the aforementioned institutions. Least but not less important, to monitor and evaluate the implementation of each of the activities developed. So for us, it was very important to mention that we cannot think in a strong and real development of the interior of Argentina, and in this case, a very crucial situation, a very vulnerable population of San Javier, without thinking, for example, in the role of the communities, the families in San Javier, but also in the interaction between the local, the state, and the national level. So just to make it closer, I want to thank all my colleagues. Lu, Ashe, Marta, and those are amazing. So we are very happy to work together, and thank you so much for your attention.
Well, hello, good morning. We're the fourth group, so last but not least. So we focus on productive development for the region. So how did we arrive to this area? Basically, we already know by now that we're talking about a vulnerable population, which, because of its geographical location and the characteristics of the terrain, is vulnerable and exposed to floods. But we also have an increased social and economic vulnerability. So we started this chain of reasoning. Let's say backwards. So we know we have a housing problem. We know we have floods. We know we have these terrains which are exposed. But we also know that this population is particularly vulnerable and particularly damaged by this, because we're talking of a social and economic vulnerable towns. And we did this backwards, as I said, and we found that they have big deficiencies in terms of employment, the employment of quality. So we started discussing this, and we found, and thanks to the strategic plan that the city developed, we're talking about an area with limited employment capacities and also activities that have a low aggregated value and are pretty seasonal. So maybe the rice harvesting lasts only a couple of months in the year. Also, we have a strong welfare dependency of the population because of this lack of employment and formal employment, which also resonates in limited educational offer and access. So it's just a vicious circle. So how can we break that? Because of course it has not only an impact on housing, but of course on health, both physical and mental, as we learned about the health in all policies framework that the girls exposed previously. And also it's a population that has no financial stability or pretty low, which would increase the resilience in terms when a natural disaster happens, they will have an increased resilience, but it do not have that.
So having mapped the vulnerabilities of the community, we and taking this main goal, having this main goal in our minds, which was fostering personal and community autonomy, we began to think about what are the assets that the community, that the vulnerable communities of San Javier have. And so we identified two main assets. Those are cultural resources, like cultural heritage. As you know, they come from the Mocovi indigenous people, and also natural resources, meaning flora and fauna for maybe tourism. So, and we thought about this in three main pillars. The first one, which is like an umbrella for us, and at the starting point, is acknowledging that we will need to transition on the main real economic income of these vulnerable communities. And we have to say this, there's much need of further research in this topic. We thought of ecotourism as like an intuitive way of solving the problem, but there's need of much further research on this. And so that really the umbrella. And we have two other pillars. The second one is strengthening human resources at the local level. So this means improving education, but also offering training regarding and taking into consideration the jobs that they're going to be doing and taking afterwards. And also the third pillar could be promotion of public and private investment. This means on the public side, on infrastructure, and also on building local capabilities. And on the private side, to facilitate, loans, especially for medium and small enterprises who are going to foster the supply of tourism activities. And of course, we thought about this through health in all policies lenses, as Paula was saying, and also through this sustainable development. So the actions that derives from this framework are following.
So to get more specific, the actions needed to foster tourism in the San Javier sector can be categorized in one of those two big economic pillars, which are supply and demand. For the supply focus, it's important to create these training and education programs that focus specifically on tourism-related skills, such as languages, design, marketing, and public speaking. Also, it's really important to collaborate with educational institutions, universities in the region, and other development organizations that can foster these educational opportunities. Now, for specifically the tourism offers, it's important to create incentives, both fiscal and financial incentives, so as to promote investment in tourism opportunities in the region. And also, it's important to create support programs such as business advisory services or preferential financing access. But all of these won't have its desired impact, that is this improvement in the supply in San Javier, if there's not demand created afterwards. That is, if the world doesn't know that San Javier has positioned itself as an important and attractive international tourism destination. So what can be done to create this? We can, for example, certify ecotourism using international standards, both for improved attractiveness and to create gather special international access to finance. It's important to, for example, invest on ecotourism. What's the name?
Yes, in ecotourism as a brand, let's say.
What infrastructure. Ecotourism infrastructure, for example.
Yeah, also.
And many other specific policies for demand policies. And all of this has to be done with a framework for design, implementation, and evaluation of public policies with a health in all policies approach and participatory process to improve governance. That would be.
Yeah, so the main goal is to strengthen the community capacities and to make their main incomes fund of incomes
Yeah.
are resilient,
Yeah, and a stable
climate
one.
resilient and sustainable.
Excellent. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much.
So, Vero, do you want to? So I just wanted to, thank you all for all the work. And I know that we have challenged you through these 3 weeks to think globally and to think in terms of like, as we look into develop policy, that we take this approach from the social determinants of health and look at policy as a part of, that create health. Because a lot of the disparities and inequalities are either created because of bad policy or a lack of policy. So when we talk about health in our policies, we are trying to address not only the, just the health of the individual, but the health of the whole community and the population. And in order to do that, we need to look into structural determinants of health that create inequalities and the intermediate ones. And so each policy have to do either work at the macro level or the intermediate. But what we learn, I think the common denominator is that intersection, that relation between all these sectors and how we can work in an interdisciplinary way, intersectorial work to create a more healthy, wealthy community. And so I just wanted to thank you, all of you. And with that, I will kind of want to open for questions and comments and maybe some feedback from each of the groups.
So thank you for all of this hard work. I do see, many reflections on our conversations here. What I'd love to see is a differentiation between the internal economy of San Javier and the relation to the external economy that affects San Javier. And to ask yourselves, as I did with the periodic table explanation, what of the momentum of the internal economy would generate value? And how would you establish that as a locally owned, even microcurrency asset that is constantly active? Whether you had a flood or you didn't have a flood, whether you got a grant from the federal government or not, or the IMF, or you didn't. So how does that self-sufficiency work to reduce crime, to reduce poverty, how do you value that locally? You have the precedent of cooperative banks, you have all kinds of mechanisms for growing from small beginnings, that locally owned self-sufficiency, even in the poorest of places. And that comes back, I think, to the local tribal and cultural traditions and reviving those for that space. But thank you for all this work. Thank you.
Miguel?
I'm sorry, I have a problem with my batteries. Okay, I'm here. Well, my opinion is that 4 groups have done a very good job. I think that they understand what we try to suggest, focusing the case studies San Javier as the whole thing, trying to think in a comprehensive way, trying to find a comprehensive approach. Even if they formulate a policy, they make a policy for a different aspect like housing or urban development or environmental sustainability or productive development. What I find it's interesting, and it's just a suggestion, very particular from our Argentinian points of view. We usually try to find the financial support for any policy, appealing to the government, especially the national government, because this is how our wealth distribution is designed in our country. And the tradition in this case in our country is that normally the financial support goes to the offer and not to the demand. So the tradition in housing, for example, is that the national government support very big programs for housing in every province, in everywhere in the country. And probably this is not the best way to have a very good control of where does money go. And normally in other countries that have better success or more successful or better results, they try the opposite, try to give the financial support to the demand. So I think it's better if we can give the money to the people to build up their own houses, if we can give the money to the families to grow up their own farms, or to have the experiences in familiar agriculture, for example. I think this could be very innovative in our country, because our tradition came from the opposite. So I think these policies are really very interesting. The only thing that I would like to suggest for the future, I think this is a good starting point for those guys, for those students to think about their own future. But what I would like to add to this opportunity, they are having to think about the future in a very small piece of our country, to think about a different way to support these kind of policies. It is the only thing I would like to add what they already present, and my congratulations to all of you. You have done a very good job.
Well, thank you so much. I want to thank you, Vera, because I think in name of everyone, because I think that your framework helped us to affront these classes, to face these classes, and I think that it was awesome to connect a social framework with a peace engineering framework. That it was a challenge for us at first, and your classes were so amazed for us to try to connect both things and to think beyond what we are used to. So thank you, and that's it.
Thank you, all of you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm happy to be useful for you. Thank you.
Great. I thank all of you for challenging to yourself. I always say not my knowledge that is built on the shoulders of many others, and the experience and lives of many others. So I think that's something that we have to, when we project our work, and we always have to keep the humanity on it. If there is people, it's not only place and time, it's also people. And I think that's our common denominator when we talk about health, is a place that we can bring together, because we all want to have, we all want to have our families, our society to have a well-being. And at bien implies all these many variables. And so we have to think for solutions in that same approach, in a multivariable approach and an intersectorial approach. So thank you all. And Ramiro.
Yes, thank you, Miguel. Thank you, everybody. And just before we close, go into a break and then transition to New Mexico. For a little bit of reminder of peace engineering. It's all about the data. Trusted data. there's two types of data, core, which is large, very big, and this is the SDGs. 17 SDGs, 169 topics, very high level. But if you want to bring it down, land it to your reality, this is a fine grain. Here you can actually measure the impact and, like you said, the basic economy, the economy of how people do the transactions at the core level, slums and all of that. So you've been presenting to both, and I'm very, very proud of the presentations here, and also Miguel, the San Javier case studies. Thank you so much for bringing that to the table. And then I'm just going to stop there and we'll have a break. But before the break, I want to introduce a troublemaker. And if you can want to display something, because there's a lot of connection to. So some of you ran into your coffee and all of that. Christos Christodoulos was former dean of the School of Engineering. He's a faculty in electrical computer engineering. He's a leading expert worldwide in EM theory, and it's antennas, communication, satellites, and all of that. Today, he is the director of COSMIC, where build satellites, different scales with different applications. And I want to tie it to this. We work with two organizations. One is the Air Force. The Air Force has now a good collaborator from here, he runs the office now for all Latin America, based in Sao Paulo. Okay, and they're funding projects to use data, satellite data. Okay, this is another group. If you can scroll down. Scroll down. NASA is about, they have this up on the web. They're launching 3 more satellites by the end of the year. This is open source data to mitigation for climate change that anybody can download. And for instance, San Javier, you can use the data to mitigate or maybe kind of predict or do a forecasting of flooding. This is open source. And we are identifying with the Air Force and NASA data centers in Argentina, Brazil, and all of that. This is part of peace engineering. So I want you to know that we all need to work together. Okay, we have the data, we need you for the policy to make a difference. Okay, and to tell the story. Because the definition of an engineer is if you tell an engineer to tell the story, and you will fall asleep in 1 microsecond. So let me.
All right, hopefully you will not fall asleep. Well, thank you very much, Ramiro.
Oh, by the way, we organized with him the first global peace engineering conference.
Yes. And I actually like anything Spanish, so I've been practicing. So I'm going to say what I feel today. Me siento muy bien por estar aquí con ustedes. So I have to say that space, because I do a lot of space, and I want to give you this information. I know you may be working in different areas. First of all, congratulations. It's not easy to be a Fulbright Scholar. I wasn't good enough to be a Fulbright Scholar. So that means I'm not sure how much time I got. You are very good. That means you're going to be very successful. You're already successful if you made it that level, but the future is amazing. Talking about the future, I want to tell you that we're working on a project that it's with satellites, it's with space. There's an area between the geostationary satellites and the moon that now some big governments are trying to commercialize. Jeff Bezos with Amazon believes that in the future, all the heavy industry would not be on Earth, would be in space, which means that's part of, what we're trying to do. We'll take care of global warming and peace engineering and everything, because all industry will be up in space. And they're trying to commercialize that region. So I just want to tell you that great things will be happening with science and engineering. And sometimes when we look at space, we say that's far. What happens in space affects everything we do here. Really, the next, whatever big revolution will happen, will not be on Earth, will be in space. So if you ever get a chance, or if you ever want to get involved with space activities, ask Ramiro, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to get you involved. So if you know even any students in your universities, I'll be more than happy to do that. Thank you for inviting me. I am very proud of you, although I don't know you. Every time I see young people who are willing to succeed and you have some ambition, that's good, because that's the future of the world. It's you. So thank you very much and all the best.